Please come to order. Good morning. Welcome. I am Randy Guy, President of Commissioners of St. Mary's County.
Evening.
Oh, good evening. I'm sorry. I'm reading the script
Okay,
here.
good script.
I'm sorry. Good script. It's evening. I'm sorry, people. Yeah. Before I introduce the other commissioners, I'd like to ask you to turn your cell phones off or on vibrate. Sitting to my right, representing the 1st Commissioner District, which includes Ridge, Piney Point, St. George Island, Mr. Eric Colvin.
Good evening.
Representing the 2nd Commissioner District, which includes Leonardtown, Hollywood, Mr. Mike Hewitt.
Good evening.
John O'Connor, who represents the 3rd Commissioner District, which includes Charlotte Hall, 7th District, Golden Beach, and Mechanicsville, is joining us tonight by Zoom. John, you on?
Good evening.
Okay, there you go. Sitting to my left, representing the 4th Commissioner District, which includes Lexington Park, some of California, Great Mills, and some of Hollywood, Mr. Todd Morgan. Seated at the table to my left is David Weiskopf, our County Attorney and Acting County Administrator.
Evening.
Alisa Cassis, our Communications Director, is sitting at the table to my left.
Good evening.
To my right, I'm sorry, to my right, yeah. Amy Carter, our video media producer, is behind the glass. Tonight's public hearing, amendment to the comprehensive plan land use map and zoning map for property located at 29871 Three Notch Road, Charlotte Hall, to change the comprehensive plan land use map category from mixed use moderate intensity and residential mixed use to entirely mixed use moderate intensity, and zoning map of the split zone property from residential mixed use and town center mixed use to entirely town center mixed use. We will now have a presentation from Mr. William Hunt, Director, Department of Land Use and Growth Management. Mr. Hunt, it's all to you.
Thank you, President Guy. Good evening, Commissioners, ladies and gentlemen. Next slide, please. As you heard, tonight is a public hearing to consider changing the comprehensive plan land use map and zoning for property located at 29871 Three Notch Road. Next. This is a view of the property and shows some of the uses that are nearby to the subject property. In particular, you'll notice the Southern States, Frito-Lay warehouse, and the flea market across the street. Next. The comprehensive plan land use map amendment is to change the split land use on the property from residential mixed use and mixed use moderate intensity to entirely mixed use moderate intensity. Next. This is a map that shows that the property is in fact split with 2 land uses at the tips of those arrows. The dividing line that you see is not the property line, it's the land use line. The property itself is one particular parcel. Next. The zoning map amendment is to change the split zone property from residential mixed use and town center mixed use to entirely town center mixed use. Next. Once again, you see that the property does have 2 zoning districts on it, just like it did with the land use. Next. Charlotte Hall Town Center is a growth area. Town centers are designated as growth areas in the comprehensive plan. They are secondary to development districts. The infrastructure should be provided to support densities up to 5 units per acre. Mixed-use development is encouraged in town centers. Next. The neighborhood description is that the subject property fronts Charlotte Hall Road and Three Notch Road. Next. The area includes a major transportation corridor, of course, with existing commercial and industrial development, as everyone here knows, plus was shown on the aerial views. And there are several nearby businesses that I've pointed out or you see on the aerial. Next. There's also the farmers market and auction across the street and the across MD 235, I shouldn't say street, and the Charlotte Hall Shopping Center as well. And the location of the property is in the Charlotte Hall Town Center. Next. The justification for the rezoning request. The subject property is split zoned, as you saw, creating different rules and allowable uses on the portion of the property that fronts Three Notch Road from the rules and allowable uses on the back portion of the property that's along Charlotte Hall Road. Split zoning of the property makes it difficult to develop and market the property. Next. The justification for the rezoning request is that the applicant believes the split zoning and split land uses is a mistake that occurred with the last land use map changes, which which was with the comprehensive plan adopted in 2010. The proposed change in zoning can be granted due to the changing character of the neighborhood and surrounding area. The county has seen significant development in the area of the subject property in Charlotte Hall. Next. Because we have a land use change involved here, the Maryland Department of Planning requires that it be notified at least 60 days prior to the Planning Commission public hearing. We did that. We sent the application, staff report, and supporting documentation to the Maryland Department of Planning. Next. The same information was also sent to the town of Leonardtown, Calvert and Charles counties, the Tri-County Council for Southern Maryland. MDP found the request to be consistent with the comprehensive plan because the property is in the Charlotte Hall Town Center. We did not receive any replies from the other government bodies. Next. On October 25th, 2021, the Planning Commission held its public hearing. Nearby residents with houses on the west side of Charlotte Hall Road attended and objected to the land use change and rezoning. The reasons for their objection was that there would be increased commercial traffic on Charlotte Hall Road, which would negatively impact their homes. Next. There was also concern with safety on the road and impacts to the Charlotte Hall Historic District. The Planning Commission voted to recommend approval to the Commissioners of St. Mary's County by 6-1. Next. As we do with all public hearings, property owners within 200 feet of the subject property were notified of the public hearing with the Planning Commission, and we repeated those notifications for the public hearing tonight. That's just an illustration of how we determine where the 200-foot boundary is. Next. As mentioned, there was concern with the impact to the Charlotte Hall Historic District, so I made an illustration that shows from the subject property to the northern edge of the Charlotte Hall Historic District is approximately 0.56 miles. Next, and that really concludes my presentation for you tonight.
Mr. Hunt, I had a couple quick questions for you. Can you go to slide 3? Okay. The property in question, does it have any accesses onto Charlotte Hall Road currently?
No, sir. Not that I'm aware.
Okay, so there's no prescribed accesses, there's no existing from before that could be reopened?
Excuse me, sir.
Sorry.
From the aerial, I see an access going to Three Notch Road. Thank you, but I don't see one going to Charlotte Hall Road.
Okay. Now, I'm going to use, from my perspective, the northwest. I see Southern States is below it, is south of it.
Right.
Correct.
Above it, to the back, is that larger building with the large parking lot. What
That's
is
the Lay's potato chip,
That's Lay's Potato Chip. So it does have some commercial uses coming off of Charlotte Hall Road.
both sides.
Yes, sir.
Right.
That piece of property was also zoned residential.
Frito-Lay is?
Is it? Was it from the map?
Well, go to slide 5 if you can.
Correct.
Yeah, this is what's confusing me
That's,
too.
yeah, me too.
So you get, the purple is the residential mixed use, and the darker color, whatever that plum or whatever it is, that's the mixed use moderate intensity.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so the differential between those two is residential mixed use allows what density?
Well, we're talking more intensity than density in this case because we're talking, it's going to be probably a commercial development rather than residential. So there are different uses allowed in TMX than there are in RMX, obviously. So I made a list of some of those. In TMX, uses in TMX that aren't allowed in RMX include alcoholic beverage production, convenience stores, fuel sales, motor vehicle service, personal storage, which is limited in some regards but still is permitted, a fast food restaurant, a car dealer, general retail sales. Limited sales are allowed in RMX, and takeout food and beverages are allowed as accessory in RMX, and then production industry limited in TMX.
Okay, not sure to answer my question, but let's just figure if they get mixed use, moderate intensity, they're allowed a higher density. Is that true?
They're allowed, yes, sir, they're allowed
Okay,
more.
that's what I needed to know. Now, the other thing that's been problematic, I was looking at this afternoon, it's been problematic for me is split zoning. I've always believed split zoning is bad government, because if you're going to have a piece, and it's all one contiguous piece, unless it's subdivided, it should be the same. But it looks like we got multiple pieces that are split zoned up there. Am I looking at that correctly?
Yes, sir, there are several.
So what, is there a, if you're talking, if someone's petitioning for a mistake in the zoning, a mistake in the comprehensive plan, doesn't that apply to all those places, all those properties?
One could make that argument.
And shouldn't all those properties be zoned the same if that's the case?
It would be logical to do that.
I mean, I'm not recommending it, but I'm pointing, I guess I'm getting at is I thought the split zoning was kind of peculiar to this piece. And after looking at it a little closer this afternoon, it's not. So, thank you.
Any other questions, Commissioners?
So, Mr. Hunt, based on Commissioner Hewitt's statement, and I go up the road on both sides, how many properties going up there are split zoned at the present time? Is there any way, I mean, you have a small material map, but I can see, could you put that thing on the screen here? It's so hard for me to see at a distance, Lois. Thank you. So if I go up the road there, I got 1, 2, 3, 4, I got at least a half a dozen here
Yeah, I saw-
pictures where you have a split zone piece of property, or actually, well, you got the yellows, you got the purples, you got the grays. I mean, it's not just one piece of property that is split zoned, but there could be multiple properties here that are split zoned along the way.
Yes, sir, the maps show that there are more than one.
That's great.
Again, it gets to be the argument that if there was a mistake was made, looks like it was made in a lot of properties. So that argument is maybe a little bit hard to defend. But go ahead.
Oh, I have nothing to say about that, sir. The purpose of the public hearing with the Planning Commission and with the commissioners is to present the facts, and then the decision makers look at the situation. The applicant brings the case forward with the justification that the applicant believes is appropriate to ask for the change in land use and change in zoning.
Okay.
Okay, that's fair.
It's fair. Anything else, Commissioners? Mr. Hunt, thank you very much, sir. Okay, we will now have a presentation from Mr. Wyckoff will now provide the format for the public hearing tonight.
Okay, certainly. Here are the guidelines for the Commissioners of St. Mary's County public hearing for the Department of Land Use and Growth Management. Request for an amendment to the Comprehensive Plan Land Use Map and Zoning Map for property located at 29871 Three Notch Road, Charlotte Hall, to change the Comprehensive Plan Land Use Map category from mixed use, moderate intensity, and residential mixed use to entirely mixed use, moderate intensity, and zoning map of the split zone property from residential mixed use and town center mixed use to entirely town center mixed use. If you wish to address the commissioners via teleconference, please call 301-475-4200, extension 1234, to provide your name and address for the record. You will then be given an opportunity to speak to the commissioners through the phone conference. All speakers who wish to address the commissioners in person are asked to fill in the sign-up sheet located in the lobby of the Chesapeake Building. All speakers will be allotted 3 minutes to address the commissioners. At the end of the 3 minutes, our communications director, Elisa Casas, will let you know your time has expired. We ask that you respect the 3-minute time limit in order to give all those who wish to participate an opportunity to be heard. This public hearing is being televised live on St. Mary's County Government TV 95 and the county's YouTube channel. If you should miss any part of this hearing, it will re-air on Channel 95 this Friday, February 4th at 6:30 p.m. and will remain available for on-demand viewing on the St. Mary's County Government YouTube channel. Citizens were provided an opportunity to address the commissioners via video submissions. We received one video submission from Carol Lee Curtis. Ms. Casas, would you please play the video submission?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Sorry. Thank you. We will now begin accepting comments for those who have signed up to speak in person. I have a list here. The first is Mr. Chris Longmore. Certainly, you may come on up. Mr. Chris Longmore represents the applicant.
Thank you, Commissioners. For the record, Chris Longmore. I'm here representing the Domba Trust that owns the property. It's really my client's family that owns it, and Mary Chambers, who is one of my clients, is here with me. I'd spoken with the county administrator to have a few moments to present this, since it was my client's application that we're here tonight, and that was seen through the Planning Commission stage. If we can start with the next slide of the PowerPoint that we have. Mr. Hunt, again, like this morning at the similar hearing, has introduced, really what we're here about. This property is in a very different position than some of the other ones you have. As has been mentioned, it is split zoned, and I heard some of the concern raised by the commissioners. I'll address those as we go through this brief presentation. This property is zoned 2 different zoning categories, which means there's 2 sets of rules on the same property. It's approximately 2 acres in size. It wasn't clear for me to looking at the maps exactly where the line is. Some of the rules about developing it are dependent on how much acreage you have. So if it's split equally, it would be 1 acre, 1 acre, but if it's not, that could really adjust what could be on the back side of the property versus the front side. There are different setback rules, there are different density rules, there are different uses that are allowed, and when you have 2 zones on the same property, it makes it not only difficult for the applicants to know what they'll be able to do with it, bluntly, it makes it difficult for staff to determine how to process those applications, because you have 2 sets of rules and you apply it to the portion of the property where it's located. That is the primary reason why we're asking for the zoning map to be amended, and the land use map as well. If we go to the next slide, this again is the subject property that we've seen. In the other slides, it's blown up a little bit more. That you can see the backside does not have an entrance in response to, at least not an active one, in response to Commissioner Hewitt's question. To the north, along Charlotte Hall Road, is the Frito-Lay center that's there. In front of that, on 235, is the business that sells the sheds that are right there across from the farmer's market. Our property, you can see, has some structures on there that have been used for various things, and actually my client will touch on that in her comments. Immediately to the south of it is Southern States. That property is completely zoned TMX, like we're asking our property to be. So the property immediately to the south of us is fully zoned what we're asking to be zoned for. And if we move to the next slide, you can see that on this. This is the zoning map. The slide that we were just looking at during your questioning was the land use map that had properties below it split. You can see on this one, at least the property immediately to the south of ours is fully TMX. The property immediately to the north along Three Notch Road is TMX. Behind it is RMX, but it has an active commercial use on it. So the question that was raised, and I'll just address it now while we have this slide up, about the other properties that are split zoned in this area. There certainly are other properties that are split zoned in this area. I worked with the Planning Commission, I think testified before this board during the Lexington Park Development District, and there was great care to go through every property in the district that was split zone and make it one zone or the other during that process. We believe that would be appropriate as part of the comprehensive plan that's happening along this line to rezone the other properties, but this request is solely for this property. And where you look at this property, where it's located, with the property immediately south to it fully TMX and ours being split, we think that that is what demonstrates the mistake for this specific property. And that respectfully is all that is before this board, and really all this board could consider tonight, because that's all that's been noticed in the public hearing. So we think we're unique compared to some of those other split zone properties. So that's why we think this is an appropriate one for a rezoning. If we go to the next slide, this is the land use map, and you see that that is split differently, and even the Southern States property has split land uses under it. I'm not sure how that happened, but we, trying to be complete in our application, wanted both the land use that's in the comprehensive plan changed to match the new zoning category that we're asking for. And that's where it looked like the property below it was split zone, but Southern States is not split zone, it's fully TMX. If we go to the next slide, I showed you this slide earlier this morning at the other public hearing. This is the process that my client has been going through for many months to get before you tonight. We followed all the rules. We had a favorable review and recommendation from the Planning Commission, who also heard concerns from the neighbors, and we had a long hearing that night. And they did vote to recommend it 6-1. We're now here at the public hearing, and the last step will be your decision in a couple of weeks before this board. If we go to the next slide. I mentioned this slide earlier today, or shown it, but again, for the benefit of the board and the public, there are 2 ways that an applicant can demonstrate that a rezoning is appropriate for you all to vote it. Those are the only 2 ways outside of the comprehensive planning process. One is a mistake in the original zoning of the property, and one is a substantial change in the character of the neighborhood. Now, we've respectfully listened to a lot of the concerns of the neighborhood. I'll tell you, it's been some of the best. I do a lot of zoning hearings, as you know. They have been very respectful and have very eloquently expressed their concerns, and we applaud them for voicing those concerns and doing it in the manner that they've done it. One of the concerns I've heard is that we keep using the word mistake, and that's not appropriate. We use that word because that's the legal standard that we have to prove here tonight. We believe that this specific property was a mistake. The other ones may or may not be. I know there's another application that may become in the future, and we'll have to look at that one individually as well. But this one is, we believe, specifically because the property just below it is TMX and ours is not, that it substantially was a mistake in the original zoning. The other prong that we can meet without proving a mistake is that there's been a substantial change in the character of the neighborhood where the property is located, and I put the case law site. And one thing to mention about a mistake that is particularly applicable to this one is that when you consider whether we overcome our burden to prove there was a mistake, it's a more liberal standard when you're moving from one commercial category to another one. This is one mixed-use category to another one. Both allow a wide variety of commercial uses. So this is not, I think there's been a misconception that we're changing from residential property to commercial property. Our zoning ordinance is not that black and white. These are both mixed-use categories. Both allow for residential. Both allow for a lot of commercial. And I'll give you some examples of some of the commercial that are allowed on each, the way Mr. Hunt did earlier. So it's easier to find a mistake if you're moving from a similar category to a similar one. We believe we're asking for that tonight. If we move to the next slide. As to the mistake in the original zoning, again, our primary argument is that it's split zone and giving the location of it, we think that it is clear and obvious from the zoning map. I'll show that, where our zoning ordinance provides that where a property is split by a zoning boundary, including special districts, the rules of the zone shall apply to that portion of the land located in each district. And that's what creates the difficulty in marketing it and developing it, is you have the 2 sets of rules, as I mentioned. That's a quote from our ordinance. And our argument, and respectfully, we submit that there's no good policy reason for this property to be split zoned. As mentioned, it's fully TMX to the south. The property just above it is TMX, and the property to the north that fronts Charlotte Hall Road is already commercial in use. So this would not change the nature, and it's sandwiched in between 2 properties that have full commercial uses now. If we go to the next slide. The change in the character of the neighborhood is the second reason that you could base it on, and it could be both or either. It is important, as I mentioned this morning, should you grant our request under this theory, that we define the neighborhood. We believe that the corridor from New Market Turner Road to south of Mohawk Drive is an appropriate narrow neighborhood. And when I looked through and looked at some of the development that's occurred since 2010 in that area, you have the office building that was mentioned by Mr. Hunt. There's the fast food that was built in 2014. There's the VA outpatient facility that was built. There's grading and road improvements for that commercial development that's anticipated at 30015 Three Notch Road. That's that large commercial center going across from, I believe, Golden Beach Road that does front to Charlotte Hall Road as well. So there is a lot of development that has occurred in this, and we think that the neighborhood has clearly been more developed intentionally because this is the Charlotte Hall Town Center where the zoning ordinance encourages development, but that has actually occurred since 2010, so we think that's another legal justification for our request. Now, if we go to the next slide. Now, there are a couple of things I just want to clarify. This is not a request to develop the property. I think that's clear, but I just want to say that out loud. This is not a specific use that's being proposed. This is asking to make the whole property one zoning category and to be the same zoning category again as the property below it, and that half of the property is already zoned as. It could be developed without us being here tonight. And for example, the back portion is RMX, the front portion is TMX. If we leave the back portion RMX on that acre, the zoning ordinance, and there'd have to be you'd have to go through all the normal approval processes. But on 1 acre in the RMX, you're allowed 5 dwelling units and up to 4 additional ones if you provide affordable housing instead of standard housing on that 1 acre that fronts Charlotte Hall Road. You could have up to a 20,000 square foot commercial structure according to our zoning ordinance. And examples of the commercial uses that are already permitted in RMX are conference facilities, financial institutions, funeral homes, hotels, maintenance and repair services, offices, personal improvement services, recreational facilities, minor, and that can be indoor or outdoor, restaurants, microbreweries, and pub breweries. Those are permitted uses already on the back portion of the property as it's zoned today. And if the property is kept split, whoever owns it and decides to do something with it is going to have to do something on the back portion and the front portion if they want to develop the full property. In that case, it is highly more likely that they will need an entrance onto Charlotte Road to support that development. That issue was raised at the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission members agreed that if it was split zoned, it would likely be split developed, and that means that one entrance would likely not be able to serve both uses. There would be different rules and requirements for those entrances. So if we leave it the way it is, it means you're going to probably have 2 different uses on there, and you're going to need 2 different entrances in all likelihood to access it. If we go to the next slide. Again, there are no specific restrictions on accessing Charlotte Road for that RMX portion right now. If the property is rezoned, and I invite all the commissioners to watch the YouTube video of the October 25th Planning Commission hearing, because the Planning Commission had a discussion once we had closed our hearing about it. And they talked about the reason, one of the big reasons why 6 of the members voted to support this was that if it's zoned one category and a development application comes in, they will have more flexibility to limit things like entrances onto Charlotte Hall Road. They could either limit it to 235 or restrict it much easier if it's part of one development proposal in one zoning district than having an applicant have to come in and try to fit 2 different applications on one property, essentially. So that was a big justification and why they thought it was a good idea to have this one zone and that the TMX zone was appropriate. If the, one of the questions that came up was at the initial hearing on this, or at the public hearing that evening, I can't remember which, was whether or not in your vote, if you could limit access by when you rezone this to allow access onto Charlotte Hall Road. I agree with the county attorney that that's not legal, in a zoning map amendment. But the Planning Commission is well aware of this property and has said that they will take all efforts to either buffer that very significantly or limit entrances if a commercial project is coming in. Now, they'll have to see the project and weigh it on its benefits and costs, but again, you can watch the video if you need that. It's public record of the Planning Commission hearing from October 25th of last year. So if we go to the next slide, the summary again is that we believe the split zoning, when you look at this specific property and not every other property in the area that's split zone, but this specific one, if you just look at the zoning map, it clearly looks like a mistake. There's no good policy reason, we think, for this specific property. And honestly, we believe that many of the people that oppose this might end up with something they like less if it's left split zone than if you create one zone and give the Planning Commission more tools to restrict development onto Charlotte Hall Road. And the character of the neighborhood, as we've said, has been significantly developed even more. It seems like there's been a lot of development there for a while. I was surprised when I looked and saw the number of projects that have gone through just in the last 12 years. And again, we'll have much more commercial development in the pipeline, I know, in that area as well. So that, if we go to I think that was the last slide. So our requested action, again, is to rezone the whole property TMX and to provide an appropriate land use map amendment to also categorize it as mixed-use moderate intensity. Now, again, I compliment the folks that have testified before. I know they're going to testify tonight. I see some of them in the audience, and we welcome that. I'd like to have my client, Ms. Chambers, who is representing the owner of the property, to also share this property and kind of her perspective on it. And then, of course, we'll step back and allow the public hearing to go forward. Thank you.
Okay. Ma'am, go ahead.
Is this on? Okay. My name is Mary Chambers. Thank you, Commissioners, for affording me.
Chambers, could you give us your address, please?
Yes. Post office box or physical?
Your-
My physical address is 235 Point Lane, Solomons, Maryland, 20688.
Thank you.
Okay? I'm not a public speaker,
Oh, you're fine, you're fine.
so that's why I had to write this. So thank you, Commissioners, for affording me the opportunity to speak to you this evening on behalf of my family's property and the history of it. I simply am the daughter of Frank and Jerry Damba, the owners of the property and the executor of their estate. I am also a lifelong resident of Southern Maryland. The property was purchased in November of 1969. My mother was 100% Irish Catholic, the third eldest of 17 children. I tell you that because the business she developed on this land was born out of the sole desire to raise enough money for tuition to send all 4 of her kids to Catholic school. My mother started her business selling donated junk items from friends and family out of our basement, and then graduated to the back of her station wagon on the farmer's market in 1963. All this happened shortly after she got her driver's license. She also started going to auctions and bought miscellaneous items that were lost in the mail. I attended more auctions growing up than you can imagine. Eventually, Mom made enough money to rent a stall, then 2 stalls, then 3 stalls from Ben Burrows on the farmer's market. She saved every penny she made while working and taking care of us while my father was fighting in Vietnam. She eventually raised enough money to purchase what she thought was a 2-acre commercial parcel of land across the street from the farmer's market. To say that she was proud of this purchase would be an understatement. She was offered money many times over the years, but would communicate to potential buyers that the property was her family investment and she wanted to hang on to it. My mother worked so hard over the years to eventually learn the antique business. Our kitchen table growing up was a library that was filled with encyclopedias, antique books and magazines, history books, price charts. She was mentored and adopted as family by an experienced antique dealer, Velma Judson of Gay's Antiques and Brandywine. Over the course of 40 years, Mom became one of Southern Maryland's most respected antique dealers and appraisers. The name of her business was Jerry's Antiques. She learned how to restore furniture from the Amish community because she felt it was much cheaper to do the restoration work herself rather than farm it out. She refurnished furniture, she did veneer work, cane chairs, and sometimes even upholstered furniture. Working round the clock sometimes to get projects finished before they were to be picked up. None of the 6 buildings ever had air conditioning or heat, and she was always open for business. I remember worrying about her passing out while she was refinishing furniture in the heat of summer because she was rushing to get a project finished for a customer. When my father retired from his career in the Air Force, he joined my mother in her business and would work alongside her, restoring furniture and buying and selling it. My father would always joke that it was much easier to serve 2 tours in Vietnam than it was to work with my mother, mainly because she never stopped working. She never took a break. She never rested. She never took vacations. My siblings and I, I'm so sorry. My siblings and I all worked on the market, as we called it. We too learned to refinish furniture and make repairs to furniture, cane chairs, and so on. We learned the value of how to work hard. We learned the value to respect and give good customer service. We learned how to give generously. I watched my mother donate items to Catholic charities and the needy families in the community on a regular basis. I watched her give incredible grace to people she caught stealing from her. She was always willing to give a job to someone that needed one or provide help to those around her that needed it. She would happily pick up and take home people that worked for her that did not have a car before and after she had worked all day. This land was our family business and investment. It was purchased and held with the hope of selling one day for the benefit of not only my parents, but their 4 children, 18 grandchildren, and now 30 great-grandchildren. As executor of their estate, it has been my job to make sure that what I do for my parents and our entire family is carried out in a fair and equitable manner. After my parents passed away, I did research and came to realize that the land was split zoned and none of the property immediately around it was zoned that way. I reached out to the experienced business owner about purchasing the property, and he suggested that I call the county and to see if there was a reason why the property was split zoned. I did that and was told they were unsure. The business owner also warned that the property may be close to the Charlotte Hall Historic District, and I should research that before asking an attorney for help. So I then called the county, and they informed me that my property was over a half a mile away from the Charlotte Hall Historic District. Therefore, I felt that it was definitely make common sense for me to contact an attorney and inquire about zoning of the property. It has always been my desire to make sure that everything that I do with this property is fair, legal, and above reproach. And since it's my family's investment of 53 years, my motivation is to make sure that I make the best decisions for my parents and honor their wishes in every way. I have honestly pursued the best results for my entire family and their many years of hard work by ensuring the property is presented fairly with the highest value and marketability possible. As human beings, I'm sure that each of you, given a family history such as mine, would want to do the very same thing for your family. Thank you very much for your time and the opportunity to share the history of my family's property this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Chambers.
If you don't have any questions, we'll be happy to step back and allow the
Thank you.
public
Thank you,
comments.
Mr., I'm sorry, not so much for you, but Mr. Weisskopf,
Yes, sir.
tell me, land use versus zoning use. That's interesting thought. If you have a TMX, you have TMX zoning. So it was confusing with the stuff I was looking at this afternoon, specifically to the south with the Southern States property. They had medium residential, residential mixed use, and then it looked like commercial. Is that, I'm not sure I understand Mr. Longmore's point here of saying that it's all one zoning, but because of land use, they can't use it for different things.
You have two different things, right? You have the land use, which is underneath the zoning, or let's consider it an overlay like we do for AE or critical area. And what land use is sort of like where the county, believes that we should be heading, Zoning is like today. Does that make sense? In a sense that,
I guess my point is I've had a lot of experience, been on the
Right.
Planning Commission and the Zoning
Certainly.
Board of Appeals, so I'm not trying to
sure.
tell you what's going on, but my position's always been, if it's zoned TMX, you're allowed all the uses at TMX. Is that true?
If you're zoned TMX, certainly.
And the idea that it looks like it was split zoned is not the case. Because Mr. Longmore's claiming it's all TMX. But when we look at that map, it looks like we have a yellow section, a green section, and a...
It is split zoned. The zoning on that property is split.
Okay, so it's not all
residential
TMX.
and
My clients, not on Southern States. Southern States is fully TMX.
TMX.
Okay. well,
Your client is TMX and RMX.
Ours is TMX and RMX. The Southern State property is
Is all
fully zoned
TMX.
TMX.
Okay.
The underlying land use map is split under that.
Right.
Now, it was allowed to develop fully as TMX. There's been great efforts by the county planning department since the last Lexington Park Development Plan to look at the land use map and make it consistent with the zoning that's on top of it. There are a lot of examples where it was not previously, but the county staff, and we've worked with them on a lot of properties in Lexington Park, the land use map has become more important because applicants have to show we can comply with the comprehensive plan as well as the zoning category. For years, the comprehensive plan land use was just kind of ignored and just was not focused on. So the land use map under Southern States is split, but the zoning is fully TMX. The zoning map clearly shows that.
Well, we're here to hear from the people, so go ahead.
Certainly.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And the next person to speak is Mr. Stephen Jarbo.
Yes, sir. Please speak as closely as you can to the microphone because of our mask, and give your name and address for the record. Thank you, sir.
My name is Stephen Jarbo. My address is 29698 Charlotte Hall Road. I've lived off and on in Charlotte Hall for approximately 60 years. I grew up there, and then I returned there after I retired. I do find that we already, with the Frito-Lay plant and also the Veterans Home on Charlotte Hall Road, we do have a lot of traffic on that back road. And on top of things, we have the Amish use that back road to get to Route 6 and other highways. So it's really a road that is kind of maxed out as far as traffic goes because it's a back road. Sometimes when there are backups on Three Notch Road, people will use that as to kind of drive around to get to Newmarket and on to Mechanicsville. So I'm a little concerned about having another, if there is another fully town center development on Charlotte Hall Road, it will increase, in my mind, it'll increase the traffic, and that's my main concern. And that's all I have, and thank you for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Jarbo.
Thank you, sir. And next is Carolyn Curtis, I believe.
Good evening, and thank you very much. The video that was presented was one that I put together. I'd like to bring forth a few points. First
What's
of
your
all,
address, if you don't mind? I'm sorry.
29849 Charlotte Hall Road, Charlotte Hall, Maryland. I would like to thank the previous, the owner for giving the historic information regarding their family. I am one family member that has occupied that property for 114 years. We have approximately 7 houses from our family. We are probably the only African-American, we have maybe one other African-American family on that road. The other is that 70% of the houses on Charlotte Hall Road meet the definition for historic, meaning that they are 50 years over and more. In a couple of years, that percentage will go up to 75%, and I would suggest perhaps looking at extending the Charlotte Hall Historic District to encompass the entire road. The other is that when you look at the standards, and has been eloquently presented, is that the current zoning does allow for commercial development. And I would, again, state, you saw a picture in the presentation. It was a night picture that showed all the lights from Southern States. It's directly across from the property of my sister's house. So there's very, very little buffer between the commercial part of the land and the Charlotte Hall Road. The other thing to bring up is that when neighborhood was considered, Charlotte Hall Road was not even included as a part of neighborhood or described as the neighborhood. And so when you talk about all of the changes that have happened in the last 12 years, that's happened on 235 Three Notch Road. That has not happened on Charlotte Hall Road. And I think if you're going to give a holistic view of neighborhood, that one should have also looked at and included Charlotte Hall Road as a part of that neighborhood because it does abut this property. The other thing to make a difference of is that when you change to TMX, which I understand is currently the zoning for the front part, that allows the erection of a 50,000 square foot building, which is the size of a football field minus the end zones. And I would argue that that type of building is appropriate in an industrial park, not along Three Notch Road. Again, I think in regard to our community, you will hear further testimony tonight. There is not one person on Charlotte Hall Road that is in support of this development. So I do want to appreciate all the work that has been done by this family, the history presented, but I also think that there needs to be consideration of approximately 40-some families who live on Charlotte Hall Road. So I would like to thank you for the time, for listening to our comments, and if you have any questions for me, I'm happy to answer those.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Next is Joan Waters. If you could give us your name and address.
Good evening. My name is Joan Waters. I live at 29861 Charlotte Hall Road, directly across from the property that we're discussing. If I may, for the record, I would like to read a letter that we submitted to the Planning Commission and to your board regarding this and another parcel which was originally a part of the request for rezoning. This letter is dated December 5th. I was going to say I apologize if I repeat some, but I'm not apologizing. I just think it's important to have it in the record. So we, the undersigned residents and concerned neighbors of Charlotte Hall Road, are opposed to the rezoning of the above properties. The applicant's current property owners contend that the St. Mary's County Comprehensive Plan mistakenly designated/zoned these properties as residential mixed use and low density zone. I'm a little nervous. We vehemently disagree and believe that county planners in 2010 and since intentionally retained the residential aspect of the mixed zoning. It would keep commercial development to a minimum and maintain zoning that would not adversely affect residential life. The applicant's primary consideration seems to be increased development and marketability, and cites significant commercial development in the area over the past 10 or so years. Development on either property would substantially increase vehicular traffic and noise on Charlotte Hall Road and affect the roadway itself. Traffic has steadily increased over the years, even without major development. And unfortunately, life-ending car accidents have occurred on the curved road between the two properties. And I live right between on two blind curves. Motorists wish to skip and avoid traffic lights on Three Notch Road, which runs parallel to Charlotte Hall Road, and speed through the area, ignoring posted speed limits. As well, whenever accidents happen on Three Notch Road, traffic is detoured through our neighborhood. It has become unsafe to even get to one's mailbox on the other side of the road. Our quiet neighborhood will also be drastically impacted by the proposed Royal Farms convenience store planned for the northern end. We foresee those patrons also racing through our neighborhood. Potential apartment units that might be proposed for 29871 with entry directly or indirectly on Charlotte Hall Road would certainly add to the congestion. That property just north of Southern States, as I said, is at a blind curve. It is a deadly mix with increased traffic. We are among several families with deep roots in Charlotte Hall. Our grandfather, Mr. Abraham Butler, purchased our properties in 1908. We are third generation to own and reside on land that he worked by hand as a farmer. And we're investigating having it also declared a historic district. We honor the legacy of our family roots in St. Mary's County, especially being the only African Americans owning property in Charlotte Hall for over a century, to be exact, 114 years. As stated in the comprehensive plan, in general, St. Mary's County must strive to preserve and enhance its present character and improve the quality of life for its citizens, while maintaining a pace of growth and development that is well managed. Development is to be of a controlled nature, directed to the most appropriate areas and discouraged in other areas. We implore you to deny the requesting rezoning request. If I have a couple minutes, again, we contend that this is not a mistake. We like to believe that the planners of yesteryear wanted to keep the residential character of Charlotte Hall Road. we define community, we define neighborhood as community and not commercial development. Actually, there are only a few businesses on that road, and I believe Frito-Lay is the only one that has entrance. That is an industrial building, so there isn't like retail customers. They don't, they don't generate as much traffic as a convenience store or other like businesses. Safety is our number one concern. And the big question is, how does rezoning enhance the character of the area and improve the quality of life for its citizens? I believe that's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Waters.
Yes, I would like to submit the petition signed by,
You could give them to Sharon. Yes, thank
The
you.
lady over there.
Give them to the commissioners. Yes,
Yeah,
please.
give it to Sharon Ferris.
Thank you so much. And next, and I'm sorry if I mispronounce this, Michael McCrooley or McCauley? McCauley, sorry, I couldn't tell if it was an R or an A.
My name is Michael McCauley. I live at 29576 Charlotte Hall Road. I would like a point of order first. I was here at a public hearing held by the planning department just before Christmas. And I understood that the vote after that meeting was 4-3 in favor of rezoning. Is that a mistake on my part? Or was it overlooked that there was another hearing on this before the Planning Commission?
Honestly, sir, we're not sure. I mean, but Mr.
I think it was October, and it was a 6-1 vote.
There was one in October.
It was
but
6-1.
That was stopped before any decision was made by the Planning Commission. So another public hearing was held right in this room in December, and there was a different vote on that.
Okay.
Does anyone remember that?
Mr. Hunt, can you speak to that since you were most likely there?
Thank you. The confusion is that at the same night at the Planning Commission public hearing where this property was voted on, as the record shows, there was a second one in Charlotte Hall that was also on the agenda that wasn't heard that night, that was continued until December. This one was October 25th and was voted on.
It was vote was 6-1 in favor. Okay.
This is contrary to what I experienced when I was here. The whole conversation was on the property that was just discussed. That's what the whole conversation was on. I would like to really appeal that. Because the same people testified. The attorney made his presentation. Could you confirm that, Mr. Attorney?
If I may, Commissioners, I know that this is a little out of the ordinary. I had one client on October 25th that we're here talking about tonight that was voted out favorably that night. I had a second hearing that was scheduled that night. We got to his case, which would have started after 9:30. They generally wrap up at 10. We asked to continue it. That was heard in December. The properties are both in Charlotte Hall. The properties were both split zoned. This property was not heard in December. The other one was. So the properties are similar, but they're different. And I think that might be where the confusion is. The same folks that spoke in opposition to this property, a lot of them spoke in opposition in December to that other property. That one is not before you tonight. That would be at a future hearing before you all once it works its way through.
Okay.
So for clarity, you're telling us that there'll be another split zoning hearing coming forth for something up in the Charlotte Hall Road in the future?
There is one, yes. That's
Thank
the
you.
pipeline.
But the one tonight is 29871.
That's, I believe that's the address. I don't have it in front of me.
I got it right here, yeah, okay.
That's the address.
Do you ladies agree that that it was not the issue that's before the commissioners. It was discussed at that December meeting?
So, yes, we do. But we will tell you.
Excuse me, I apologize for interrupting. Sir, could you please address the commissioners? And and we can call people if we need to the microphone, but please address the commissioner, sir.
So you agree that the
Mr. McCullough, you should address us and just please give us what your concern is, please.
Okay. My concern about that was that there was a different vote the Planning Commission came up with that night. There was 4-3. I just assumed that it was as a result of the hearing that we all attended that that vote was taken. But I guess somehow that can be resolved by the minutes or whatever. With regard to this particular issue, first of all, I don't think that these important decisions should be made piece by piece, parcel by parcel, without a comprehensive plan for the town center, or whatever it's called, of Charlotte Hall, which was designed for more intensive development, but not just helter-skelter here and there, but in a thoughtful way that evaluates the different interests involved and is presented to the public, in which the public has opportunities to make their input, and then a plan, a comprehensive plan is developed which can make sure that conflicting interests are handled in a way, and not in a piecemeal way, but in a thoughtful way, and especially in this case that protects what is the gateway to St. Mary's County, which is becoming an unattractive gateway because of the spot zoning that's taking place and the different ways people are using their property without a thoughtful plan being made so that real values are not in conflict, or that they are thought about and decided on more thoughtfully and in ways that minimizes the conflicts between use of properties. I think the values that are at stake here is people who own property and they want to maximize the value from it. But I don't think it's the role of government to try to enhance the marketing of individual properties without at least strongly considering the other values that are at hand. One is the use of this road by the Amish community. I see them pass by every day. Today when I went out to get the mail, there was an Amish buggy just going by. And a number of times every day they go rumbling by. How will they manipulate and get around with much more intensive traffic coming out of this property? And it was sort of acknowledged that the entryway onto Charlotte Hall Road will have to be the one that serves this property. So I think we need to be aware of the value that the Amish people offer to our community when these decisions are made. in a way that makes their lives much more difficult if it's not correctly decided. And they add such a value to our lives to see this unique way of life. It draws people here, and it's certainly worth our consideration and protection. The other value is that of historical value of this property, which a family has had for over 100 years. And the quality of people who belong to this family, who have made their family an important way of having a positive interracial relationships for our community. I know that one of their family was the first director here of the Housing Authority. I worship together with many members of the family at Immaculate Conception Church. They've been ministers of the Eucharist, lectors. One of them, I heard talking recently about his time slogging through the jungles in Vietnam. A number of them have children who are currently overseas in the military. And whatever they has done has been done with thoughtfulness, quietness, and real values that are important to our community. One of them has worked for the education department of the county. Another one has school buses. And just in many ways, they have supported and been real stalwarts in our community. And this property they've managed to hold on to and see it as a place of beauty, which came through in the presentation they made. So there's a real traditional value here that I think should be compared just to, as opposed to just trying to maximize the marketing. So that's sort of the points I wanted to make.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. McCauley.
Thank you. And last on the list is Mr. Ignatius Thomas. If you could come forward and give your name and address. Thank you.
Good evening, sir. I'd like to thank you for giving me the opportunity to express my concerns regarding this proposed change. I realize that often change, they say, is necessary. But thank goodness we have you sitting here to hold the reins of time and change.
Let me interrupt you. Can you give us your address?
29843 Charlotte Hall Road, on the big hill right on the curve where the majority of accidents take place at back road.
Oh, no.
Sorry to interrupt you.
Yes, sir. So I'm asking that you hold the reins of time, sir, so that our area, our home land will be preserved as a historic site, if it's not officially as historic as far as we are concerned. My cousins have presented quite a few details that have impacted us. So I know often change has a two-edged sword sometimes. But as I've traveled throughout the world, I noticed many historic sites. When you get there, you know you'll step back in time. No doubt about it. But as sometimes if the reins are not held steady, the horses will run away with you. and often they'll be running and ain't sure where they're going. Where the heck am I going? I just am asking that you preserve it carefully, because what's at stake is much more than a historical site. It's an impact so that we can reflect back. Our children will have a balance, a standard on where they really came from, what was involved in helping as a stepping stone towards future success, not just for our family, but for our country, sir. So I would appreciate that, General, including those that have a desire to want to move forward and to increase. I can understand that. But my petition, my request from our family is to hold the reins of time. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And that's all the people that we had to that signed up to speak in person. We will now begin accepting comments through our teleconferencing system.
Thank you. Good evening, and thank you for calling in to participate in the Commissioners of St. Mary's County public hearing for the Department of Land Use and Growth Management. Please speak clearly into your phone and state your name and address for the record, and it is preferred that you use your phone rather than using the external speaker. Good evening. You may begin your remarks to the Commissioners now.
Hi, excuse me. This is Jill Waters. I live at 29849 Charlotte Hall Road. I'm just calling to speak because I don't really know all of these terms that you guys are using. I'm not a lawyer. Most of us in the room are not lawyers. So I just want to put that out there. But if I'm not mistaken, when I tuned in on YouTube, the slide that was up said that the two things that would qualify it for rezoning was that there's proof that it wasn't a mistake, and that there hasn't, and also proof that there hasn't been considerable changes. And like hearing that, oh, I think maybe they made a mistake, I don't think it sounds like solid proof to me. And that's that part. Also, the changes, as my mom and aunt said earlier, the changes that have happened have not been on this road. I'm 34 years old. I've lived here most of my life, and there haven't been any like major changes right across the street from my house or neighbors' houses. The only new thing I remember coming to the road is like the funeral home and Rita's and stuff, and that's all down the street. So I don't know, I almost feel like it's kind of pointless to say why I don't agree, because I don't know what correct words to throw back and all of that. So, like, I'm just going to say my personal thing. I hate, like, starting out with this, but I have, like, a couple of mental things, like anxiety. It's nothing crazy. It's just, like, PTSD. I've been assaulted, like, in the city, and I came home, and I was, like, so glad to be safe. But even still, like, I just got to the point where I'm not scared to go outside anymore. And then, like, I'm hearing that there's going to be, I know it's not definite, I know all of that, but just the possibility makes me want to say, like, no. And it's saying that it's mixed use, and that it could be developed on at any time, and it could be something that we don't want, but why hasn't that happened? Like, it could be. I'm just hearing, like, coulds and maybes, and I think the last thing I'm gonna say is that just like what are you bringing? Like, I don't think we would be so opposed if it was like a definite, like, visible, no doubt about it like enrichment to the street for the community. Like, I haven't heard anything about that. Like, I just hear like my family and neighbors begging y'all not to make our street more dangerous for the people that live here and the hundreds of thousands of people, I'm sure, that travel on this road. Because I know numbers add up quickly. That seems dramatic, like hundreds of thousands, but that's how many people I'm assuming. And then whatever that number is going to get bigger. So, yeah, so just that, and just really thinking carefully about like digging up ground and cutting down trees and messing with the earth and everything. That's all I'm gonna say on that. Okay, I am done. Thank you so much for letting me talk, and thank you to everyone that spoke before me.
Thank you.
Thank you for your remarks. Good evening, and thank you for calling in to participate in the Commissioners of St. Mary's County public hearing for the Department of Land Use and Growth Management. Please speak clearly into your phone, state your name and address for the record, and it is preferred that you speak directly into your phone rather than using an external speaker so everyone may hear you. You may begin your remarks now.
All right. First of all, good evening, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak. My name is Jean Thomas Adams. I live at 29875 Charlotte Hall Road in Charlotte Hall, Maryland. And I have been a resident. I grew up here, left, and I've been a resident back here in Charlotte Hall for approximately 25 years. I attended the 2 hearings before the Planning Commission opposing the change in the zoning. However, we were defeated in our efforts. I realize I'm before the county commissioners now. I'd like to continue stating my opposition to the rezoning, although I realize that most likely the building of the apartments across the road from me will still occur. My main point, or several points, is that when an accident, I have an issue with the traffic on Charlotte Hall Road and the possible increase of traffic should this apartment building be built. When there is an accident on Route 5, traffic is diverted onto Charlotte Hall Road, which causes a dangerous challenge for those of us who live on this road. It's even difficult to cross the street to get to your mailbox to get your mail. Also, over the years, the road has turned into a race strip for young and old car drivers running or exceeding the speed limit, which is 25 in some areas and 30. This turns into a drag strip of racing. So with additional traffic due to an apartment building, this is going to be a major concern for those of us that live on Charlotte Hall Road. In addition to the traffic, there's a lot of trash that we're already dealing with, and I know this will increase. And we don't get any county services. It's up to the residents to try to keep our roads decent and clean. Let's see. And then we have a warehouse on this back road. The Frito-Lay warehouse is on this road, and that already has a lot of trucks, tractor trailers coming through. So with additional traffic, there's the deterioration of our roads, which is another concern. I mentioned about the additional traffic if there's an accident, which is a concern. This is a historical area, or this road has 25, if not 30 houses that have been deemed historical. And we're trying to keep some aura of a historical road to where we live here in this county. And I'd like that to be considered too. I acknowledge that the property owners have their right to build. And looking ahead, this project most likely will occur now that it's in the commissioner's hands. But I still would like to enter my opposition along with my cousins, who I'm sure have already spoken, Ms. Curtis and Ms. Waters. And we are all of the Butler family. I would strongly like to urge the commissioners to restrict traffic access onto Charlotte Hall Road. If this project occurs, please at least give us some say-so in directing the traffic back onto Route 5 to divert some of the additional hazards that we're going to have to deal with living on this road. That is a major concern, is the increased traffic. I think those are pretty much the main concerns that I did have and wanted to express to the commissioners should this apartment project end up getting approved. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your remarks. Good evening, and thank you for calling in to participate in the Commissioners of St. Mary's County public hearing for the Department of Land Use and Growth Management. Please speak clearly into the phone, state your name and address for the record, and it is preferred that you speak into your phone so that you may be understood. Good evening. You may begin your remarks now.
Yes, good evening. My name is Donald Curtis. I live at 38235 Thomas Lane, Mechanicsville, Maryland. But I'm also just recently personal representative of my mother's property at 29849 Charlotte Hall Road. I'm calling in opposition to the request for the rezoning. I happened to log on earlier this morning and saw where there was a proclamation by the county commissioners recognizing Black History Month that started today. It's kind of ironic that our family, which is the first and for many, many years, the only African-American property owner on Charlotte Hall Road, now is being challenged, so to speak, with rezoning in front of our property. That's going to have impact on our family for years down the road. I wanted to, first of all, bring attention to Mike McCauley had made reference to many of the contributions that our family has made to St. Mary's County, and I'm the representative he made mention of as the Housing Authority Director for St. Mary's County back in the early 70s. But I also wanted to call attention to the two different meetings that were held before, because there were two separate meetings by the Planning Commission. The first meeting with this particular property was the subject matter. It was denied 6-1. However, the second one that was done in December, the decision was 4-3 against. But I wanted to call attention to the reason why the second one was so close and the first one was not. One of the things that was talked about by the Planning Commission in the first meeting was that if the zoning went through to TMX, that it would give the Planning Commission tools in its toolbox to be able to restrict access and that sort of thing to the Charlotte Hall Road. And as a result of that, some of the Planning Commission members actually were convinced to then vote against it. The second meeting, one of the planning commissioners that was not at the first meeting asked a question whether or not the planning commission had the legal right to constrict beyond what the zoning requirements were. And nobody on the planning commission could actually answer it. They hemmed and hawed and talked about their experience in the past and that sort of thing. But then they brought the county assistant attorney to the table and asked him the question. And his answer was that no, the planning commission does not have any legal authority to restrict beyond what the zoning restriction would be for that property. And as a result of it, the decision was a lot closer, 4-3. It's a little bit ironic, again, that we are celebrating Black History Month, and it takes more than just a proclamation, but it takes really honoring and respecting the contribution that African-American families have made to St. Mary's County. And our families is one of those families that have done that. And what we want to do is preserve the legacy, preserve the quality of life right there on Charlotte Hall Road. The other thing, too, that I wanted to make mention of is that, and I made this argument before, and I thank the commissioner that kind of made the same argument tonight, and that is that it was not a mistake. You don't make the same mistake over and over again down the same road. What I believe happened was that there was foresight in seeing that there was a tremendous difference between Charlotte Hall Road, which is the road that we live on, and Three Notch Road, or 235, which is a dual highway that runs parallel. And indeed, on 235, there has been significant changes there. But on Old Charlotte Hall Road, no significant changes to the community whatsoever. And so I believe that the mistake was not a mistake, but rather it was foresight to be able to preserve that quality of life on Charlotte Hall Road. The final point I wanted to make is this. I felt a little bit patronized in the sense that we've made I believe, a good quality presentation tonight. And we've done every time we've had an opportunity to present this to the Planning Commission. And we were told that it was a great presentation, on and on. But you know something? A great presentation don't make nothing unless it actually affects the decision itself. I think what was presented tonight by my sister was a petition by over 30 property owners on Charlotte Hall Road who are against the rezoning. My question to the county commissioner is this. At what point in time do the commissioners actually represent the constituency, the residency, the property owners, as opposed to other developers who may come into the area? You have one property owner who wants to make a change, and you have over 30 property owners who are against it. At what point in time does the weight of the 30 weigh against the weight of one? Finally, one other recommendation I'd like to make, and that is that if we had known that Frito-Lay was going to put up a warehouse right there with access off of Charlotte Hall Road, we would have protested that as well. But the reason why is because of the ridiculous requirement of only notifying property owners 200 feet away from the proposed rezoned property. I mean, it affects everybody on that road, not just somebody who owns property just 200 feet away. Had we known that, we would have protested that as well. And as well as the TMX for Southern States. The only reason why we know about this one is because it's right across the street from our family property. And so again, I would urge you to consider the fact that, first of all, there was no mistake at all, but there was foresight by the Planning Commission, the professionals, to make sure that Old Charlotte Hall Road maintained the character that it has had down through many generations. The second is that there has not been a substantial change in the neighborhood on Charlotte Hall Road, none whatsoever. Anyone who's familiar with it would know that. But now if you travel parallel on 235, there is significant change there. And so therefore, I believe that the split zoning was foresight as opposed to a mistake. And the fact that there has been no substantial change in our neighborhood whatsoever. In fact, we have been doing whatever we can to make sure that we can maintain the kind of atmosphere that we have on our Charlotte Hall Road community. And so with those points in mind, I would really consider and request that even in light of the fact that this is Black History Month, that the county commission would do something and say, you know something, we're going to respect the legacy of one of the oldest families in St. Mary's County. And we're going to listen to not only them, but also to the neighbors as well on Old Charlotte Hall Road, over 31 property owners. And so we respectfully request that you deny this. Not only this one, but the one that's supposed to come up next as well. Thank you for an opportunity to make comment.
Sir, thank you for your remarks.
Thank you.
Hi, Sandy. This is Elisa Costas. I'm calling to see if we have any more callers for tonight's public hearing for the Commissioners of St. Mary's County for the Department of Land Use and Growth Management.
No, ma'am. We've completed all calls.
Thank you, Sandy. County Administrator, Commissioners, this completes the calls for tonight's public hearing.
Thank you, Ms. Casas. Please note that the public comment period will remain open for 7 days until close of business on February 8th. Should the public wish to send an email to csm@stmarysmd.com or U.S. mail to Post Office Box 653, Leonardtown, Maryland 20650. Commissioner President Guy, that concludes the public hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Weiskopf. With the testimony that's been given so far this tonight, we will make a decision when we get the public hearing time phase, and we'll let you know. Thank you very much for tonight's closed session.